Hey guys, our objective for today is I can determine if the text is written in a first person point of view or a third person point of view. I know I am successful when I can identify the pronouns used by the narrator. I can use the anchor chart to determine if the pronouns are first person or third person. I can state who I believe is telling the story. So remember, point of view is who's telling the story. The author, when they are writing the story, chooses who the narrator will be. The narrator is the person telling the story. First person point of view tells what he or she sees, hears, or experiences. They are in the story. Third person point of view tells what all the characters see, hear, or experience. The narrator is not one of the characters. They are outside the story. Readers can identify the point of view by noticing the pronouns the narrator uses. So looking at our anchor chart, we have the pronouns I, we, me. We could also have my, us. All of those things are including the person that's saying them. If it is third person point of view, it'll have pronouns like he, she, they, her, his. It's talking about somebody else's thing. All right, so we're going to look at our story. We read yesterday the Primo story, and we're going to see if we can figure out who is telling the story and what point of view it's from. Score! I just got a letter from my primo, my cousin Carlitos. I live in America, but he lives in Mexico, where my family is from. Maybe someday we'll meet. So as I was reading this, I noticed quite a few pronouns. I noticed I got a letter from my primo, my cousin, I live in America, and then maybe someday we'll meet. So it's talking about me and somebody else. So the narrator uses the words my, I, and me. And looking at the anchor chart down here, I know that if the narrator is using I, me, we've talked about my, that this will be told in first person point of view. The person telling the story is a part of the story. Now I have to think about who is telling this story. And I know once I start reading that Charlie is narrating or telling his own story. So he is telling his story. This is coming from Charlie. If this story were told in third person, some words that the narrator might use to tell the story was he, she, they. So instead of saying, score, I just got a letter, they would say, score, Charlie just got a letter, or he just got a letter from his primo, his cousin Carlitos. Then they would go on to say, he lives in America, but Carlitos lives in Mexico, where his family is from. So those are some ways that we could change it to make it third person. All right, looking in your book on page 23 and 24 again, we are going to find the point of view, and then we're going to compare the point of view of the characters. So page 23. Dear Primo Charlie, how are you? Do you wonder, like me, what life is like far away? I live on a farm surrounded by mountains and trees. My family grows many things such as maze. We have a burro, polios, and a gallo. Every morning the gallo crows and crows. As I was reading that, I see a couple things. He's asking how Charlie is, because he's writing to Charlie, and he says, do you wonder like me? So I see me. I see I live on a farm. My family grows things. So he's talking about his family. and we have a burrow. So I'm looking through this and I can see on this part, Carlitos is actually telling the story, is actually telling this part of it. This is his letter to Charlie. And so I want to think about, what do the two cousins each do throughout the story? Well, throughout the story, each cousin is writing to each other, and they are telling about their life, what they do where they live, and the things that they do in their life. So I know that Carlito is curious about his cousin Charlie because he's asking, do you wonder like what life is like far away? I live on a farm. And so he's asking these questions. He's trying to give Charlie some information about where he lives because he's curious about where Charlie lives. And then at the end, the boys have an idea. What is the idea that the two boys end up having at the end of the story? Well, I remember from the story that they want to come and visit each other. So they come up with the idea for Charlie to come to Mexico and for Carlitos to come to America. All right, so we're going to go through these same steps. You guys are going to do one of these on your own as you do. And we're going to be telling the point of view of a short little paragraph. So we're going to read the paragraph, identify the pronouns, and then determine if the pronoun is first person or third person. Then we're going to make this sentence right here. I see the pronouns, filling in the blank. I think this is first person or third person point of view. So I think who is telling the story. All right, so the first paragraph. Brian could not bear to be on the roof of the skyscraper any longer. He wasn't usually afraid of heights, but the wind was so strong and Rufus kept messing with him. Would you try to land on your feet or your head? Rufus asked with a straight face. Rufus could tell that he was getting to Brian, which only encouraged him to keep going. Let's go look over the edge, Brian, suggested Rufus, knowing full well that Brian would refuse. So as I was reading the story, I noticed a few pronouns. I noticed in the second sentence the word he. I also noticed in the second sentence at the end, it says Rufus kept messing with him. So he's talking about somebody else outside. He's somebody that's in the story but not telling the story. And then it says later in the fourth sentence, Rufus could tell that he was struggling or getting to Brian. So that when I think about my point of view chart and I see all of these he's and hims, I know that it is third person point of view. So as I'm thinking about filling in my sentence up here, I see the pronouns he, him, and this, I think this is third person point of view. So I think a narrator is telling the story, somebody outside the story is telling it. All right, let's do another one. The stars were burning brightly in the sky. The evening breeze felt cool on my skin. It was the last night of summer break and I was calm, oddly calm. It's not that I was excited to go back to school. I wasn't. School is a lot of work for me, but I was excited to see my friends again, and I knew that she would be there. So I'm going to look for the pronouns, and as I'm reading, I can see in the second sentence, the evening breeze felt cool on my face. It was the last night of summer, and I was calm. It's not that I was excited to go back to school. I wasn't. School is a lot of work for me. So as I was reading this, I saw quite a few pronouns. I saw my, I saw I a couple times, and I saw me. Um, when I think about that and I can go back to my point of view chart, I can see that if it's I and me, it's going to be first person point of view. So I can complete my sentence and say, I see the pronouns I, my, and me. I think this is first person point of view. So I think, I don't know the character's name on this right now because I haven't read the whole thing. I'm just looking at this paragraph. So I'm going to say, I think this, or I think a character in the story is telling the story. So the character in the story is telling the story. All right, let's do one more and then you guys have yours. So we're going to read this paragraph again. It was noon. The sun was high in the blue sky. The air was filled with the sounds of lawnmowers and birds chirping. A door opened. A young boy walked outside. A woman's voice could be heard from the house yelling, "Wait for me, Michael!" The young boy did not wait. He ran to the sidewalk and began jumping. Yeah, machine gun! He yelled, pointing an invisible gun in all directions. He took imaginary shots every few seconds and pantomimed the recoil. So as I was reading this, I saw a couple things that was kind of confusing. So it says in here, a woman's voice could be heard from the house yelling, "Wait for me, Michael." Now, I see the word me, but that's only in one spot and it's in quotations. That's what someone in the story said. It's not who's telling me, it's what somebody said because it's in quotations. So I can't use that me, but I can use a little bit further. He ran to the sidewalk and he yelled. He took out. And so as I'm reading this, I see more of he. And because I see he, it's going to be third person. So I can complete my sentence frames. I see the pronouns he. I think this is third person point of view. I think an outside narrator is telling the story. We don't know who, it's someone not in the story. All right, you guys are going to do this for your little section. It's a little paragraph just like we did in the video. You're going to answer and fill in this part by typing it into your Canvas page. After you complete that, you are going to read over the synonyms and watch the Brain Pop video. Then you will be doing 2 activities about synonyms. So the first one is to draw the antonym of night. And once you watch the video, you'll be able to understand what an antonym is. Then it says to choose a word and write its synonyms in the chart. So you have a list in the directions for this part of your assignment, and there are a list of different words. You're going to pick one of those words here, and you're going to fill in the synonyms for these empty spaces. Finally, you will watch a video on proofreading, and then you will proofread your own paper.